let me introduce your speakers for today. We have joining me, we have Antonia and Kay, and Antonia is new to HDK. She's only been with us 6 weeks, but she comes with some great experience. Some of you may know her from Dance East or from Norwich Theatre, and she's one of our project managers here at HDK. And also joining us is Kay. Kay's been with us for a little longer, and she has appeared in other webinars, so you might be familiar with Kay. She's a project coordinator here at HDK, and she comes with great project management experience working on festivals, events, and also digital projects, including digital archives as well. So we've got a lot of experience, and we're definitely, for today's session, leaning on that experience at HDK to present this webinar. As I said, thank you for introducing yourself in the chat box. We'll be sort of going through that when we're not talking, and Antonia and Kay will looking at that in the meantime. But having introduced ourselves, and I'm director and founder of HDK, I nearly forgot to say that, let me just explain what we're going to cover in today's topic. We're going to talk about the process of building the perfect website, now that is something we're going to try and do in half an hour, just over, I think when we rehearsed it, just over half an hour, because we recognize that you're all going to be at very different levels of experience here. So trying to cover something that, you know, at the very least can take a week for a microsite, but we're also pitching to do a website that will take over 4 years to build. Trying to condense that process into half an hour is quite an achievement. So bear with us as we try and give you the top level ideas of how you build a perfect website. It's a process that we follow, but it's different for every client and it's different for every project. And it's different, you know, if you're working with a different agency, they will have some other principles will be the same, but they'll specialize or focus on other elements in more depth. So we're going to cover the sort of the top level things, and in some areas we're going to go into a little bit more in depth or do some of the sub processes, if you like. As I get onto that, as I was thinking about that, I was thinking about why is it after, well, I've been building websites for 25 years in the arts and culture sector, working at places like Sadler's Wells and English National Opera on their first website. I've worked in agencies, and then we've set up HDK, and I think I've probably worked on nearly 500 websites. And there are some elements of every project that are the same, but still after all those years, I still get excited about every new project that we work on. And I was trying to think about what it is about websites that gets me excited, you know, in a fresh way every time. And I guess what, I'm just admitting people as well at the same time. I guess what gets me excited, there's two things I was thinking about. One of them is the fact that technology around websites is constantly evolving. I mean, it's come so far since when I first built a website at E&O. And we can see where it's going as well with, you know, you may have heard about the talk about Web3, and you may have talked about, been thinking about AI and how that will impact websites. So there's still a lot of interesting ways it's going. So that constant changing of how we do work within a process keeps us on our toes. And I think another thing, I think for me is, as humans, we love stories, and behind every website, there are a lot of good stories. There's the stories of the organization and the people in the organization, the people who lead the organization. What are their challenges? What are they trying to achieve? What are their ambitions? But there's also the stories of the users. Why do the users come to the website? What do they want to get out of it? So we're always dealing with fascinating stories on every single website that we work on. So that gives you, you know, that's why I still get excited about it. What I'm hoping that today that we can help you with, and what you can possibly take away from today's session, is in going through the process of how typically a website is built. I'm hoping that you can, if you are working on building a website, maybe with another agency, with another partner, or with us even, what is it that you can do? How can you play your part in affecting a great outcome, a successful outcome, a perfect website? So that's one thing I'm hoping that you'll take away from today. I think the other thing I want you to take away from today is if you understand the process, and as I said, we're an example of one of those processes, it's very similar for others as well. How do you, knowing that process, how do you choose the right partner to work with? So those are the two things I'm hoping that, through our talk over the next half an hour, you will get an idea of, and it will something you can take away. It's going to be different for everyone, and you've all got very different experience. So we've got Q&A, and I want to leave as much time for that so that we can really personalize the session to what you want. If you do think of any questions, put them in the chat room, put them in the chat box as you think of them. We'll try and answer them in between speakers talking. And we've also got Lavita, who's our senior project manager here at HDK, on hand as well. And if she can answer some questions, she will in the chat box as well. So just to give us a sense of the experience on the other side, if you like, people, you attending this webinar, I'd like to just start off with a very easy exercise using the chat box. Think about how many websites that you might have been involved in creating as a client, or as a team, as one person driving it, whatever. And I would love to know how many websites you have worked on, approximately. If you've done a lot of websites, just keep it approximate. If you've only done one, if you've done 0, it just will help us as we're talking today, just to have you in mind and think about bits we might slow down on, bits we might sort of skip through a little quicker. So if you're happy to, start sort of sharing those. I can see there's some experienced people in the room. There's people with 7, 5, 6 webinars, websites you've worked on, some people with none, some with 1. So we've got a challenge here to help you all. I think for those who've done none, the work is easy here. You're going to learn about the process, and hopefully you can take that away and think about that when you're commissioning a new website. For those of you more experienced, and Karina has about 20, I'm hoping that you will find elements of the process that you may not have done before. We're still learning new elements of a process that we're adding into how we build websites. So there's always new things to learn. So I'm hoping that you'll find some of those things, and feel free to contribute your experience later on. So I've probably talked too much about the setting up. Now I want to get on to what the process is. I'm going to define the top level process in the slide that's just about to come up. So we start off with procurement. We talk about discovery. This is a really interesting, we're going to go a lot in depth into discovery here today. We're going to talk about design briefly and development, and then finish off with deployment and aftercare. Now, out of those 6 stages, one thing that we don't talk about when we're pitching for new work, for example, is we don't talk about the procurement, because that's kind of out of our control. That's very much your side of things. So I'm just going to explore that in a little bit more detail. I guess procurement is about how you match yourself with a more technical partner who can help deliver the website. It might be more than one partner as well, in fact. But it's about bringing together, you have got a problem that you need resolving, and who are you going to work with in partnership to deliver that final website. I guess it all starts off with the brief. And what makes a brief? Now, if you're one of the people who've never written a website brief before, it can feel a bit daunting. You might use a consultant to help you, someone who's more experienced to help you write that brief. You might look online for templates. There's no one way of doing it. We get all sorts of briefs through to us. And I guess it's the starting point for us. But for you, hopefully, it's at the end of a process where you've done some internal reflection. Why do you need a website now? What's wrong with your current website? What do you want to have in your new website? All of those sorts of things will feed into your brief. You'll want to talk about the audience that you're trying to reach, the visitors you want to attract, and define those in some ways. You might have some targets that you need to achieve, some business targets, financial targets that you need to achieve that you might want to put in there. The more detail you put in, the better response you're going to get from the people you reach out to with their proposals. So ideally, if you can indicate budget, that's really helpful. That will guide the agencies that you approach on whether they're a good fit for you or not. timing wise, if you've got some ultimate deadlines that you have to reach, you need to get those in there as well. So all of those things come together as a brief. You'll send those out, and ideally you want to give from 2 weeks upwards for people to respond to that. They'll need time to process it. They'll need time to come and back and ask you for clarifications on things that don't make sense to them in the brief. And then they'll need time to put all of that together. That it takes at least 2 weeks to do. So you want to make sure if you're timing when you send out your brief in terms of the whole project, that you've giving enough time for that. And when you come to select who you want to work with in the procurement process, I think this is the time to think about who you really want to work with. Now, if it's a big project, you're going to be spending a long time with them. So you want to make sure that you've got some good trust there, that there's some chemistry with the people that you're going to be spending a lot of time working with, that they're proven, got a proven track record. And I guess here it's important to remember that there are a lot of great agencies out there who are serving the arts, culture and heritage sector, of which we're one of them, I hope. They're all going to offer something slightly different. It might be that the budget levels that they work in is different. It might be the platforms, the technical platforms that they use are quite specific. It might be the expertise they have in integrating third-party software, for example. So all of those things are going to be slightly different for all of them, and your procurement process is about trying to find that perfect match.
Once you have made the decision on your web partner and finished the somewhat boring administrative phases, we start on our journey to make a new website. The first phase that we jump into is the discovery process. I would say that this is the foundation of your new website, and therefore I dare say it's the most important phase of all the other phases. This is also the part where you, the client, put the most input. We understand from the procurement process what needs to be done. The question we ask during this process is how we can implement that on our new website. Here are the 5 elements that we like to cover during the discovery phase. It's audience profiling, making user journeys, site mapping, wireframing, technical discoveries. But before we delve into these 5 elements, we also like to think about other considerations, which is also carbon consciousness and accessibility. If you have joined our previous webinars about Website Trend 2023, you'll remember us mentioning that sustainability and accessibility in websites are not a trend anymore. It's a standard, especially in the arts and culture heritage organizations, because we most serve an somewhat instrumental purpose to benefit the people.
So an important part of user experience is accessibility, and there are checklists and guidelines online to make this easier to understand, but we work to an AA rating by the WCAG guidelines, and what this means is that it takes into consideration things like color contrast, text readability, and these are just a few of the things that comes into play when making your website more accessible. And by creating a more accessible, fully intuitive and responsive website, not only does it mean that you can reach a broader audience and more people can use your website, it actually improves your overall site performance and your SEO by default. And that means that you will have a very happy marketing team as well. And this is some of our marketing team looking very happy, purely SEO related joy, nothing to do with the Frappuccino. You can also create focus groups at this point, and that just means gathering a group of people, you might have done it already, to trial and test your website to get constructive feedback, which you can take forward in the process of creating your new website. Another thing to consider is your carbon footprint, and a new website is the perfect opportunity to become more sustainable. And this is something that is really important to HDK as well, and we work to create cleaner websites which don't kind of sacrifice the design elements in any way. And things to consider here are whether your hosting provider is using green energy, and also whether your content is carbon hungry. So that just means optimizing your images, optimizing your video content, and also considering how many click-throughs the user needs to take to get to that information, which also comes into play with accessibility. So it all works together. Before you can jump into site mapping though, you'll want to understand your audience a bit better. And that is my absolute favorite part. So you'll explore your current website more and take a deeper dive into Google Analytics than you have ever done before, and also use other things like Hotjar just to really understand how your current audience is using your current website and what their behavior is. It's also a great opportunity to consider what your ultimate goals are and who you want to be targeting and what audiences you want to be interacting with. What are their incentives? What are their pain points, and how you might address those with your website experience. There are a few audience profiling systems around. So if you're familiar with the audience agency's audience spectrum, if you could just put any emoji of your choice into the meeting chat, just so we can get an idea of how familiar that is. Maybe one. Okay, a few more, yeah. So we're using this example because we thought people would be more familiar with it. But there is other systems out there and new systems actually on their way through the Arts Council. So, but for this circumstance, in a nutshell, the audience agency surveyed the whole of the UK and created segments which the audience could be categorized into based on how people interact and engage with arts and culture. And this is helpful, as I can see that most of you already are familiar with it. So it's helpful so that you know how to communicate with your target audience based on what motivates them, what their concerns are. And that does come into play with your website as well. So for example, if you were targeting experience seekers who are really confident in what they like, they want to try something new, but ultimately they want their experience with you to be meaningful and to be stimulating and moving, you might want to then create a more interactive website. So for example, we worked with Ennio Marketo on their website, which is interactive. So as soon as you go on, it gives you an idea of their character. They work with origami and theatre. They're entertaining, they're silly. So their website uses colour, it's playful, and you as a user can explore more. You can get the information you need, or you can play essentially. So from that initial point of contact, you get an idea of who they are. Or if you're targeting home and heritage, for example, who are more interested in deepening their understanding, expanding their knowledge, they want to learn stuff, they're really curious, you might create a website that has a content focus that really draws out some great content marketing. So, for example, with the Vaughan Williams Foundation, their website has all the logistical information that's important for the foundation, but it also has these key pockets throughout the website, which just plays on their audience's curiosity and gives them a little something extra that they might not find elsewhere, like these featured letters on their homepage. So once you have that understanding of what your audience want and what their concerns are, you can then create audience personas, which sometimes feels like a huge task, but is something that your chosen website agency can support you with and will enjoy supporting you with. So then you are armed with all the knowledge you need to move into the next steps.
So depending on the complexity of the work, we either start off by making a user journey map, or we jump straight away to site mapping. So I'll just explain the user journey mapping a little bit right now. The purpose of making a user journey map is to create a visual illustration of the user flow so that it's clearer to what can be improved to your new website. So here are some of the templates that I got from a program called Figma. It's really not important how the map looks like. The key element here is to have your ideas on the stages of the user flow, action points, pain points, and finding opportunities through that to find, to actually determine what can be improved on your new website. So you can find these templates, as I said, in a program called Figma, Miro, or Canva. They are all free and they offer whiteboard functions so that you can join in with your team and create do your online workshopping on creating user mapping. Now, this would be something that you would do with your agency as well, but it would be a helpful exercise for you to sort of explore the possibilities of user journey mapping yourselves and get the idea, maybe add it in your brief if you want it to be a little more in depth. And then now we move on to site mapping. Site mapping is like creating walls and doors for your new house. You think about all the rooms that you would like for your new house. You set up where the doors would be. You set up which rooms would sit next to each other. Think about how you would get from your living room to your toilet. In terms of website, this is where we list all the pages you need, categorize them together, and define hierarchies between each pages. So one example of a sitemap would be like this. This is something we did in the previous project, and I just stripped down some of the minor pages so that it gives you a better overview of what a sitemap looks like. So you can see the home page on the top, and then see 6 main categories: visit, what's on, explore, support, about us, and a footer. And then there would be pages sitting under those main categories. Sorry. So just for your better understanding of what it's like to create a new website, new sitemap, we came up with a tiny little exercise that we could do together. So here's the new page that we would like to include in this sitemap: hire venue. Which, with user journey in mind, what do you think would be the main categories that would sit under? Please write it in the comment what you think about. It's really important to think about the user journey as in sitting in their point of view. Think about what kind of tabs you would click on when you're trying to find that specific information. Would you click on visit to look for a hire, or explore? About us? Yeah, a lot of people are commenting about us. Explore, yeah, maybe if someone wants to explore more about the possibilities of the website. There's a lot of opinions about us. Yeah, sometimes it could sit on their footer as well. It really depends on what you think about this page, maybe the importance of this page. If you think it's not in line with the identity of the website, you could put it in a footer, make sure people can actually reach it, but as well, at the same time, not hinder the identity of the website. Thank you so much for your chat comments. Separate header. Yeah, that could be also, yeah, that could also be an option. Creating new headings, yeah. So in this website that we created, we did put it under visit because we thought it would be something people would think of, because hiring a venue is also a part of visiting the venue as well. And there's really no right or wrong answers. It's just about what kind of audience that you are thinking of reaching out to. So now that you are an expert in making a sitemap, these are some of the programs that you could use if you would like to know what it's like to making a sitemap. This would be something that creating a sitemap as well is something that you would do with an agency. But just to give you an idea, Glue Maps is very good program for you to use if you, because it's really clear on how the hierarchies works between the pages. Apart from Miro and Figma, which offers more functionalities, it's more interactive. So it may be overwhelming when you're just building a sitemap. And then with the sitemap in mind, we create a wireframe. Going back to the building house analogy, we know what rooms we want and where they sit. Now in this wireframing process, we are thinking about where to put the TV, where to put the couch. Is the couch facing the TV? Or maybe we don't want the couch to face the TV. You would think about where the fridges would go, where other electronic gadgets would go. So one thing to note here is that we're not talking about what the couch looks like. What would be covered, this would be covered during the design process. Here, we are only interested in the placement of furniture and electronics for a new house. So this is the example page of a wireframe that we created before for River and Rowing Museum. So now you can see all gray squares and text because this is not a design phase. We start off with a low fidelity wireframe. I like to use Figma for creating a new wireframe. We like to share the link to our clients so that they can put comments next to the boxes that they might want to adjust. So it's a little bit of a collaborative move between us and the clients. The Figma offers high quality of YouTube tutorials as well. So it would be easy. It might be helpful for you to sort of jump into that and see how Figma works in creating a wireframe. So this would be the example of how the wireframe can be translated into a design. You can see that the placements are very similar. We have a heading, we have the title with the video, but the way that it's translated with the brand in mind and with the user journey, it's more beautiful. It has a more characteristic of the website than the wireframe. And then wireframe and technical discoveries go hand in hand. Think of this way in the house analogy, building a house analogy as well. From the wireframe, you know where you want the fridges and the TV. Now this would be the opportunity for you to think a way to maybe link your TV to your fridge. So maybe the fridge could play Netflix for you while you cook. And this would be something that you would need an advice from an engineer point of view. So that's what we're doing during the technical discovery. We discuss about ticketing systems or shopping integrations, CRM integration, etc. We go through a full-on discovery process for this integrations and give you ideas about what kind of integration system that you can use and how that can be linked with our website. So during this process, we start off with blue sky thinking approach in which we think about, in an ideal world, what would be the best to have for your new website? And then this will be trimmed and furnished throughout questions and refinements, asking questions like, is this within the budget? Is this accessible for your users? Is this sustainable? Is there any alternative solutions to what we want to achieve? Would be the questions that we will be asking over and over again. What will be the most useful during this process on the client's end is to be clear on what is needed versus what is wanted. Sometimes we like to think that this would be a function that we would need, and sometimes it can be something that can be actually been done in a different way, or maybe not as necessary as other functions that you might need for your website.
Thanks, Kate. So Kay and Antonia have gone into some depth, the most depth we'll go to in this session, into one particular element, the discovery phase. And I think that's useful because, you know, as was mentioned, it's the foundation for the rest of the website. When we get to the design phase, now we work, because of the sector that we work in, we work with a lot of creative people, and we find that a really exciting moment when our clients, who are very often very visually driven, really respond to seeing the first product of that phase, the discovery phase. And in the way that Kay talked about rooms and where you put the furniture, you might decide that the fridge goes in into the kitchen, for example. The design phase, if you like, is where in the kitchen is it best to put that fridge? So that is now putting, as you say, as Kay was picking up on, putting the cushions and the coverings on the sofa and where the sofa fits, you know, with regards to the light in the room and those sort of things. That is where the designer starts to come in and flesh out those wireframes and give it character and give it brand as well, and visual identity. So a really exciting part of seeing those ideas coming together. But what is your role in this? What can you do to bring about a successful end website? Well, I think it's really, your role now becomes one on being able to feed back to the designs that are presented to you as a result of this design brief and discovery phase. So if you're one of the people who are less experienced in this, then this is the moment to try and find your voice and feel confident to give that feedback. You might not like what you see sometimes, and that's incredibly important information for the designer. If you don't like things, that's absolutely fine. What then happens is there's discussion on what is it that you don't like. And sometimes it highlights things that weren't articulated in the original design brief. So really important that you feel confident to give that feedback there. Another important thing at this stage is that the ultimate decision maker is part of the process. Sometimes what happens is it's delegated the building of the website to other team members, and they don't have that relationship with the designer at this critical point. So all of those things have to be managed maybe by yourself to get this process working successfully. Now, there are sometimes there's discussions on how many versions of the design we show you. You know, there is a strong argument for the designer listening to the brief and only presenting one design for you. Other times, clients like to be given a choice, and that will change from agency to agency and designer to designer. But it's all part of negotiating the best process for you. And then also, what do we present you with? Some people like to see all the pages designed right from the beginning, whereas we like to maybe show one or two pages to start with, a home page, and maybe it's a what's on page, for example, a key page in the website. And the reason for that is it's a bit like when you read a good murder mystery. All those clues are in there from the first couple of pages, but the writer then has to draw them out and thread them through the book. It's a bit like that with the design elements on your website. They should all be there. They should all seeded in those first couple of pages, and then everything else should sort of come out from that and should be flexible enough. The design should be flexible enough to respond to your content, but with the clues all being there in the first two pages. And then another consideration here is we know with our clients and from experience that what excites and delights the clients is those little bits of animation and movement. And while we want to incorporate those into the site, this maybe is a little too early to bring that into it. So it's sometimes it's just holding back a little bit, getting the foundations of the design right, if you like, the core elements and what we call flat designs, and letting the animation, trusting that the animation will come later. And the best way, if you don't feel confident about that, is to see what other sites the agency has worked on to get an idea. And you can discuss that, certainly, but it probably won't be visualized until later on in the process. Then we move on to the development phase. And if you like, the design is almost an add-on to the discovery. It's very much about the planning stages. And now the development is where the work is being done behind the scenes. The coders start getting involved. Of course, these days, we're not building everything from scratch. We're using established systems to get across to a certain stage. And then we're often customizing elements of it to the brief. So that's where a lot of the interesting work is happening, is that customization. But to start off with, we're using platforms, content management systems. At HDK, we use WordPress, but you may have heard of Joomla, and you may have heard of Drupal as well. So these are some of the common systems, and there are others out there. What we like about WordPress is that it's probably the most popular system. So if you then take the website to another developer, they can pick it up easily. There's a economy there that works well for a lot of our clients in the arts culture sector. But other agencies will defend their systems equally strongly as well. So you'll have to sort of get to understand whether you have any preferences there, or whether you trust the agent to make that decision for you. And then while that's all being set up, we're starting to pick up on the technical brief and integrating third-party systems such as booking systems, classroom booking systems, shops, those sorts of things as well. And of course, more increasingly these days, CRM systems as well. So while that's all happening in the background, what is it that you can be doing to ensure success? This is a great moment for you to be really focusing on the content, because it's not going to be long now before content is going to be uploaded to your website, and you've got decisions to be made here. Are you copying across content from your existing site? Are you starting from scratch and rewriting a lot of your content, hopefully rationalizing a site? What often happens is sites grow organically over time, they get big, and this is a good chance to do some hard pruning on and focusing the content on what you're trying to achieve. So again, this is things that, depending on your budget and your resources, you might want to do in-house yourself, or you might want to ask your agent to help you with. So for example, at HDK, we're doing more content copywriting, we're doing more sort of support on that side, but equally it's stuff that you can do yourself. I think ultimately it's about thinking about the tone of voice that you use for your content, thinking about carbon consciousness, thinking about the quality of the images and the videos and how much you use. And a lot of that is simple organization of your content. So it's easy to do, it's not rocket science, but again, it all depends on the resources that you've got to do that.
So you've made it to the most exciting part, and your site is ready to go live. But before we give you the keys and your site is ready for the world to see, it will go through thorough testing on different screen sizes and devices, just to catch any final tweaks in the functionality and the design once the site is being used with uploading content, etc. Now is also the time to re-engage a focus group for the beginning, or a new group, just for that further testing and to catch any other bits of feedback from before it goes live. And this stage is where you'll also get training in how to upload content and manage it, so that you are confident navigating the back end of your website, ready for the world to see. And we like to record these sessions so that you can refer back to them, or train up new staff members as well.
You may think that this is all done once you launch the website, but there is one more step that you need to take, which is as important as any other steps that you've powered through, which is kind of contradicting what I just said about discovery phase, but just stressing that aftercare is very important. Although we go through high standards of quality assurance during deployment process, it is not uncommon for issues or further requests to come up since you start using your CMS more, because you're using it more on a daily basis. Sometimes the issue just only appears in the environment of a live website because it's interacting with users from all over the world. Most of the web agencies would allow a window for you to flag anything that is not working as expected. So this is a great opportunity for you to try as many functions as possible, especially ticketing systems. Try purchasing an item and find any glitches that you can find to make sure, to make sure the website is working perfectly. You could try doing this like you did during the deployment process, using different using different devices like tablets, phone, computers. Maybe in the future we might have some other devices to check. And with that, now we have officially created a perfect website.
Thank you, Kay. Thank you for landing us safely. We are, and thank you, audience, for bearing with our mixed metaphors. There was quite a few metaphors being threaded through all of that, so thank you for indulging us there. We're going to come back to a Q&A bit, and I can see some questions coming in the chat box. So please, if you've got any questions, put them in there now. Before we do that, we would love some feedback on the survey. So we're going to give you a minute or so just to fill out that survey. And while we do that, we're going to play some music just to as a little pause as well. And then we've got couple of house notes, and then we're going to come back to the Q&As. If you are producing a new site at the same time as looking at brand as a whole, is it advisable to use one agency for both, or build a team and line up timelines? Tessa, that's a great question. Thank you. I can say from experience, we have dealt with different scenarios here. So again, when I answer a question, I never say there's a right or wrong answer. I know that from experience that what sometimes happens is we get invited to build a new website for someone, and it becomes very clear that there isn't a strong visual identity that we can design on, or we start designing and it's clear that the design of the website the client might want to affect the visual identity, so we sort of backwards design sometimes as well. But I think you're absolutely right. The ideal process would be to get your branding right first, because the branding answers so many organizational questions, if you like, and if you've gone through that process, you know so many things about what you're trying to communicate and what values you want to get across, that all of that can feed into the website design as well. So in an ideal world, yes, you would build that out in your timeline. You would do a brand exercise first, and you would make sure your brand you're happy with that, and then you would go on to the website design, and that is the ideal place. But the reality is, it doesn't always work that way, and definitely, there are ways of working around that. And actually, that's a good point. We've described a process. We've described a narrative process, if you like, from A to Z, of what you might do things, and that you could argue is an ideal order. But the practicalities are often that we have to squash things up, we have to overlap processes, and it's not ideal, but it does happen sometimes. So it's something to bear in mind. So I hope, Tessa, that helps with your question. Kay or Antonio, if there's a question that you want to jump in with, do feel free to, because I can give me a chance just to read some of the other questions.
Yeah, so Julie just asked, what are our thoughts on displaying the full web menu on the home screen versus an other menu? We find that the decision to use a full navigation on the top of the page versus a burger menu, for example, is quite dependent on the target audience. Full menus are easily identifiable by an older target group and allows a user to access content within a click, whereas a burger menu tends to be more recognizable with a younger audience, because for me, as personally, when I see 3 stripes, I instantly click on it and see the menus, which might not be as intuitive as in other demographics. So it really depends on the audience that you're targeting.
Right, thanks, Kay. Justine has asked, any advice for putting together a user group? Who should be on it, and how do you get them involved? Great question. I've been involved in a couple of user groups over the years. One of them very early on would be accessibility groups, so having a group of people with different user requirements. We have done that we've done that in different ways. We've done that with the client and their contacts, reaching out to their contacts, and we've done it with specialist agencies, particularly when it's accessibility, who have a database of people that they can call on. There's an old understanding that 5 people is perhaps all you need to identify a high percentage, 80% or 90% of the issues with a website. So you don't necessarily need a big user group to bring together. I think you want to reflect the diversity, as much diversity as you can. You want to reflect the widest range of the audience that you're trying to attract that you can, and and obviously think about people's abilities as well to use your website. So you want as much of that to be reflected. But the idea is, again, this is going to depend on budget and timing as well. You can get very formal about these things, or you can be very informal about these things. But yeah, I think you don't necessarily need a lot of people to create that user group, and it can be done through informal connections, or it can be done through specialist agencies who can manage that for you as well. What is a good guesstimate, a budget range to have in mind if you want to build a website with a professional? It's definitely how long is a piece of string, I would say. And what I think is a good idea is to maybe, if you can, have a look at other, particularly we're a good community in this sector, and we have a network of people who work in different organizations. I think it's always good to reach out to, if there are other organizations that are similar to yours that have a website that you aspire to have, to maybe just reach out to them and say, how much have they spent on their website? That'll give you an idea of what current prices are. Now, I'm aware that there is a group of agencies. We have probably very similar pricing, and you're talking, for some of those projects, you might be talking about 20k upwards, 30, 40k and upwards. There will be others where you might have smaller agencies who maybe work, maybe not in the way that we do. I wanted to pick this up, but I didn't know if I had time. We very much work on custom designed and everything coming from the brief and the discovery phase, and we build everything to. But there are solutions where you'll work with templates, template-driven websites. You'll find a template you like and you'll customize it for you. That will reduce the costs a lot. You have to decide whether what the end product is and how that matches your values and what you want to communicate. But that is something that we see happening all the time, and it's completely legitimate and makes sense at certain levels. So there, you might be I think you want to start, if you're working with an independent developer, maybe from about 5k upwards. So it's really difficult to say, and there are bigger institutional projects that might be talking from a minimum of 100,000 upwards. So those are just a few sort of off the top of my head sort of suggestions. You want to pick any? Yeah.
Aston asked, how much of a logistical nightmare would you consider building a members login portal to a website? This, I think, really depends on the level of integration that you want, and it would really come out in the discovery process. So you would think about what level of member login you need, what it is that they need to have access to, and then as you explore that, it will depend on what system you're integrating with. So not necessarily a logistical nightmare at all. It would be something that you'd think about more through with your web agency to really figure out what it is that you need.
Thanks, Antonia. And Imogen, you're asking, how does website redesign affect SEO? I've inherited a big old website that needs quite a lot of love. Is it better to go all in or make small changes one at a time? Well, SEO is a specialist area in itself, and we touched on it earlier, but the design in effect isn't the thing that will necessarily affect SEO. It's perhaps the coding behind the design that will affect it. And really it's the content, ultimately it's the content that will affect the SEO. That's my short answer. I'm not a specialist. I don't know if anyone wants to add anything to that.
Yeah, it's also important to make sure that you spread out some internal links that you could link to other pages. That really helps with the SEO, as well as having some external links that you would like to send the users off to another link. And this is something that we do, we think about during the wireframing process, because that's when we talk about where the buttons go, where do they link to each other, which is something that can affect the SEO of your website.
Right. Anne-Marie, I'm going to attempt to answer your question now. We need a complete new website build. Our current one is keeling over. Yeah, we've seen that before, but we are on a tight budget. Yeah, we work in the arts, so we expect that. Building a ticketing, we're on tight budget to build in ticketing for visitors and applications for artists for our call for entries. Is it cheaper to build these in or add integrated systems such as Jotform? We use Umbraco at the moment. This is an outdated system. Is it worth sticking with? With what you know. Okay, so there's a lot of things to unpack there, and I think maybe this isn't the best time to do that. But I would say I think what my experience with Umbraco is, and I don't have a lot of experiences, is that you will find it hard to find developers to pick up a system if you're not, staying with the developers that you've got at the moment. So for us, that's one of the reasons why we like WordPress, because it's such a universal, it is the most popular CMS. So, and it's very user friendly. I'm not going to say that I can say what the positives are of Umbraco, but I am aware that it's harder to find developers. So your pool of agencies that you can work with is probably more limited. That's not to say it's a good system or that it's outdated. I'm not going to answer that question. But in terms of plugging in other systems, yes, if you haven't got the budget to start from scratch on a new website, there are lots of ways to plug in ticketing. It just depends on how smooth you want that integration to be, and ultimately budget is going to help you determine that. If you haven't got the budget to do it, you're not going to be able to do so much, and you're going to have to rely on systems that you can pull in that can run alongside your website. So you'll send people off to that system and back again. Okay. Any other questions that we want to pick up on? We're coming to the last few minutes. I'm afraid we did go over the time we wanted to.
Someone just asked us eco and carbon. Yes, Liz asked us eco carbon conscious hosting companies recommendations. We use CloudAbove for hosting our websites, and they're using sorry, that's not what we are using. We're not using greenhouse gas. We're using green energies to power the servers, and also, yeah, sorry. Can you, would you like to add something to that, Hans, please? Yeah,
no, absolutely. We use them, we're a partner and reseller for them, but you can go to them directly. They're great people. They've got great business, and it's not greenwashing, that they can prove that their carbon credentials there. So that's who we use, CloudAbove. Just want to say, really, thank you very much again for joining us today. We enjoy delivering these sessions. We hope you enjoy listening to them, and do sign up to some of the future webinars. We hope to see you again another time. Thank you.